right, welcome back to the Man Ship Podcast. We are remote again. We're a little bit further away than our last one, and we are joined by, well, the crew is all here. Even August showed up to this one.
Yeah, a little bit of drive, but it's a special occasion.
All right, and we got Emmett, of course. And Emmett, I'm going to let you introduce our guest today.
So our guest today is none other than the infamous Aubrey Lange down here in the San Angelo, Mertzon area. And Aubrey is very well known in this part of the world and this part of the helicopter industry. He's had a helicopter company down here for how long, Aubrey?
Since 78.
Since 78. So a pretty good amount of time. So you guys pretty much specialize in anything from cattle to wildlife to oil and gas and
anything we can get away with.
Whatever pays the bills and the insurance on these dang things.
That's right.
So, Aubrey would you like to walk us through how you got into the helicopter industry and how you started flying?
I flew for the Army 10 years. I was a medevac pilot during the 60s. I went to flight school in 67 and went to Vietnam in 68 and back to Vietnam in 71. But anyway, I got out in 77 and really hadn't planned to fly. I didn't think you could make enough money doing it, but I had some kinfolks that were in the cattle business. One of them was a gentleman by the name of Willard Jordan. He was an uncle-in-law, and man, he had auction barns everywhere, and he was right in the middle of all that, marketing cattle, and he kept telling me, you need to get into this. We need some help. These guys can't get their cattle in. They can't get the labor. And so I told him, well, let me look at this. And I did, and I got to doing the math, and I had to go chase around and talk to some other operators. And of course, other operators don't want to tell you how much does it cost to run one of these things. And back then, it was a Bell 47 or a Hughes 300. That was it. That was what was available. Maybe a Hiller every once in a while you'd see a Hiller. But that was all that was available. And I finally figured what it would cost to run one and what it would take to, how many hours I'd have to fly a month. And I had it all figured out and went and bought one. And, of course, that's a story in itself. I bought a Bell 47 B1. That's the biggest 47 they made. 47, if people don't know what it is, it's a erector set in a bubble. And
it's those classic ones you see on TV. You used to see on like Magnum
one on
PI.
MASH is one, yeah. And they're great, hardy little helicopters, but the one I bought belonged to the Water Department of Duval County. And if you go back in history, when Lyndon Johnson was elected for senator, they had to dig up some more votes like they're doing now. And they did in Duval County.
Really?
And the gossip was that they didn't even take them out of the graveyard order.
Same way the tombstones were laid out.
They just right there. And, of course, Johnson won. And, of course, he was indebted to, I guess, to George Parr, who was a judge of Duval County. But George had done everything he could. He bled that county to death, I guess, but had a lot of oil and a lot of money, and they did a story at 60 Minutes that kind of made the Texas Rangers look kind of bad about George. They were letting him get away with it, and so they swarmed in on him. Eventually, he killed himself. I was in the Army when he killed himself because they were going to put him in jail. And this aircraft that I bought was being overhauled, and they put a maintenance lien on it. Of course, they locked it up, and they needed to sell it. And so I ended up buying it, and that was the one I bought.
That was the number one of the fleet, huh?
Yeah, that was it.
So in I guess that would have been 78.
Yeah.
In 78, what could you get a Bell 47 for?
$30,000.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it was fresh overhauled, but the thing had a supercharger on it, and I don't think 1,500 hours all you get on it,
Really?
Or maybe 12. I forgot. And of course, you had to overhaul it again because that supercharger is hard on that engine.
Eat them up.
Yeah. But I run it through an overhaul and then overhauled it again and used it. And then FAA guy told me about these Robinsons coming out. And he said, you ought to go look at those. And I did. And heck, we bought the first one and for $58,000.
Golly.
Wow.
And it was a HP, which is 150 horse. And they didn't last long because people were crashing them and they just didn't have enough power. And then they went to 160, and now they're 180. But great little machine for exactly what we were doing, hunting coyotes and gathering cattle, primarily gathering cattle. I was pretty good at it, and that's why my uncle-in-law really wanted me to get into it. You know how to work cattle, and I could, and I had a knack for it, and got in some work down here. King Ranch had some cattle down here near Menard that couldn't get in the pen. They had the trucks there, the old. Gosh, they couldn't. The big yearlings, and they couldn't. They chased them off a couple of times, and they were in a cafe there in Junction, and my uncle-in-law happened to be there and hear them bitching about it. And he said, "Well, my nephew-in-law is up here. Won't you call him?" And I did down there. It's one of those great things. You pin them, in 30 minutes, and left. And I couldn't get away from them from then on. I flew from then on, just solid, just doing stuff. So
that was probably a pretty big transition coming from. You started out flying.
Yeah.
I mean, what helicopters were you flying when you were deployed and when you were in the Army and doing all that?
They put me in a Huey, and that was a UH-1 or whatever they want. And that was a standard helicopter. It was a great helicopter to fly. It had a big engine in it. It had a 1,300 horse engine, And being a medevac pilot, we flew them basically empty. We weren't troop carriers where we loaded down or ammo. The gun guys would load them down and have to skip them off, and finally get them going, and because they knew they were going to dissipate all that ammunition anyway. But our problem is we might get loaded down, but we took off fully. I remember they carried 225 gallons. That's less than 3 hours, 2.5 hours of fuel. So it squirted it in there like a fire hose. But that's the way they are. I think a Jet Ranger, I looked the other day, and it burns 30 gallons an hour. Jeez. My gosh.
But, you start looking at the amount of weight that you're moving, and then you throw your payload on top of that, you're going to have to burn some shit in order to get that stuff off the ground.
Yeah, real fast.
Physics is a big pile of shit.
You got a boat in there?
Me being big as I am, it sure makes it hard to...
Yeah. You need to be in a boat or a truck or something.
That's all. That's why I got a boat and a truck.
That's all you need.
Getting off the ground.
Yeah.
You need a big boat and a big truck.
Yeah.
So you said that you were in the Army for 10 years. How many tours did you do in Vietnam?
Two.
They'd
have gotten another one, but they run out of war. They were running us over there, and then 2 years later they run another, and then I got back in 72 on the second one, and then 75 was already busted out, and they were already pulling back, but they'd have got another one if I'd have got in there earlier.
And I'm assuming you enlisted. You weren't.
Yeah, I went to Texas A&M, raw, know, and
that's where Uncle Daryl did ROTC and all that stuff there. It's serious.
That's serious. I grew up in Mason, Texas, and I weighed probably 60, 70, maybe 80 pounds in the 8th grade. So, the big kids come off the floor with me.
Right.
And you kind of spent all, if you weren't playing football, you weren't crap,
Right.
Well, hell, I couldn't play football.
That was heck, I think right when I was in football, that was about the transition phase where used to you were a pussy if you didn't play football, and then it started going where the oh God, you play football, you're a conformist, kind of bullcrap. But it is funny, like you're saying, like then you damn near had to,
shit, yeah.
Says someone that never played college football.
But I would have loved to play football. I think it was a great game, but golly, coach never run me on. Hell, I'd be bouncing across the top of them. I was so small, and they loved that,
I bet they did.
So I guess I've spent most time trying to prove myself, and I went to A&M, went to hardest school in the country. Wanted to be in the Corps, which is, and I went to the worst unit, which is a band. At that time was the meanest unit down there, and I played the trumpet, and I was pretty good at it. And thank gosh I was in the band, because that's how I got through school. Colonel Adams, can you let this guy register again? He's on probation, but it's okay. And they'd let him. He was a god down there. And boy, if he wanted me to stay in another semester, I could. I went through all the way through. I think I got a degree in basket weaving or something. And so But you couldn't be on scholastic probation when you graduated, so I finally got off. Another kid and I we got 1 grade point too many. But all I wanted was so I could get a commission.
Right.
And that's what I did. And I got a commission, and that's all I wanted. I wanted to be a captain. I thought that was the greatest rank in the Army, and that's what I ended up being, a captain, and it's still the greatest rank in the Army.
So you accomplished that goal then.
Yeah.
So, no, the reason I asked you that is I feel like I talk about it a lot, how much of a disservice to society, basically, how little they talk history anymore, like real history. And pretty much the only thing anybody really knows about the Vietnam War, unless they have gone and researched it and done reading themselves, would be just what they've seen in the movies.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, what movie is the Mel Gibson one? We Were Soldiers, and that's all the...
That's pretty real there.
Okay.
But, you know, what is it? What's the bullet one where... Full Metal Jacket. It's a little creepy, but the one on Mel Gibson, that was a real deal. And
so it was just complete and total chaos.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna on your first deployment. Was it pretty much immediately when things kicked off, or were you pretty aware of how bad it was getting?
Oh yeah, go through 9 months flight school. You pretty well knew what was going on.
Oh, I got you.
You knew, but I was a little older. I was a ranking second lieutenant, so I was class commander, which wasn't any help for me. But you knew, they trained you and said, this is going to happen. This is what's going to happen. You got to be careful. And they trained us well. They put it, no matter how good you are, they beat on your head. You had to solo within 16 hours, as I remember. Most of us soloed within 12, but that's with a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wasn't there would be 3 pilots with 1 instructor, and we'd get through, and he'd say, "Oh, you were really good over here, so and so," and then another kid, "Oh yeah, you did those turns real right." And then he turned to me, and I was class commander. I was a wheeler, and he says, "Lad, if you ever do that again, I'm gonna pull your head off." But he was nice about it. But anyway, I struggled through that thing.
Well. That's a good question.
Did we meet up?
Yeah, how did we meet up?
You were digging so hard on that.
Well, my dad's, been in the industry for a long time, and, whenever he started, Aubrey was already doing his thing, and, I actually remember my dad telling me here a little while back, you were talking about whenever you were getting started and nobody really wanted to share their secrets doing that shit. He said that he called another outfit further down the street here, and said that he did not get all that much pleasant feedback from him.
I talked him to death. See, that's about all I need to know.
He said, I called Aubrey, and he was nice as could be, and told me to call him back.
What else you want to know? Yeah. So I didn't care, and I still don't care. People call me up, and say, what, and I don't mind helping them. We got more business than we know what to do with, so whatever they want to do.
And that's kind of how Emmett and I have taken everything is, there's still a big cross-section of the group of pilots that are, they keep their keys close to their chest, so to speak, and they don't want to hand out any secrets or help or throw anybody business here and there. And it's like there's always going to be, once you get established, those times where you can't do the job. And if you help, you got some friends that do it, you send some business that way, they're going to end up sending you some business. And then everybody ends up making more money together instead of just trying to nickel and dime and undercut and do all that BS.
Yeah, we've had that. And, of course, Andy Wheatley up there, he's a good friend. And if we get something that he can do, he dumps his crap off on me. I've got a deal out in New Mexico that he dumped off because he's a big wheel up at Wagner's now, of course, and he's the best pilot up there. And he couldn't do this in New Mexico, and now I have to drive all the way out there.
I haven't heard from Andy in a while. He's
so busy. Quiet. He's big deal.
Somebody needs to fuck with him.
Yeah, he can't talk to anybody now. He's way out of our league.
Tell me something about this chicken flying you guys do.
Oh, well, I can't tell you much because it's
top secret.
Secret.
Oh, it is.
Secret chickens.
It's just like the rice pollination. You can't tell nothing about it. It's all secret. But the chicken thing, they're endangered. The lesser praying chicken is endangered,
We're good.
and stuff is falling off the walls. But luckily, it's not my stuff. But
I need some of Emmett's E-tape. That red stuff ain't working very well.
but yeah, the lesser prairie chicken is endangered, and they've been kind of studying them for a long time. Apparently, they get a big grant, and it's good.
Oh, nice.
And it's a good for all of us. They got a lot of technicians, a lot of people involved in it, and there's a company out of Cheyenne that runs that. They do a lot of studies. We do a lot of studies on if they're putting in a power line or a windmill farm. They've got to go in and check all the nests, all the predator nests.
Right.
And make sure there's no eagles there. And if there is, then they got to kind of back off a little bit on their windmills. But we look at they program. Well, I say they take a picture and actually locate every nest that's in that area. I've done it out in New Mexico.
So they're GPS and everything.
Yeah, I mean, wherever stupid nest is out there.
Oh, yeah.
Hell of a survey.
but like the prairie chicken deal, they used to have several different prairie chicken surveys, but more or less the one that's still going now is the range-wide survey, and that's what determines the fish and game if it is still in fact on the endangered list or not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you know more about it than I do because I really didn't know that. There's a greater prairie chicken, which isn't endangered, and we do studies in that area, and it's great because you see a lot of them.
Right.
But it's all under the Fish and Wildlife Service, too.
Perfect.
And,
I've seen, you ever been involved in some of that bighorn relocation stuff out there?
they wouldn't let me touch that. That's our Parks and Wildlife. They bring in guys from
Do they?
Utah and
okay.
Idaho.
I got you.
And not us. We're
Yeah.
local. We're too
we're not
close.
professional.
Well,
enough.
them Westerners, they got experience with them big
That's
sheep.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're too unfamiliar with the state of Texas, I guess.
You Flatlander Texans might want to
Yeah, that's
do
up
some
there with the
fornicating with the sheep if you
and
see one.
Yeah, right.
people are nervous. No, the people. What is that?
Men are
old-
men and the sheep,
sheep
are nervous.
That's the one.
So we kind of strayed off topic here. I was wanting to.
It happens.
Yeah, I was wanting to visit with you a little bit more just about your time in Vietnam and all
I
that.
can do that. You bet.
All that fun stuff. So you flew UH-1s. You learned to fly in the Army in a Hillard 12E, correct?
Right.
Okay. And once you got done with your second tour and they brought you back stateside, what did you do after that? Were you sent back to Fort Walters for instruction?
No, they sent some guys back, not me. They didn't want me to be instructed. But I went to a dust-off unit that was sitting there. It's in San Antonio. It's called the 507th Air Ambulance. And it was kind of a place where they parked all of us for a couple of years, all of us pilots and people, and then they'd start shipping us out in after a couple of years. It was a terrible place to be assigned. God, nothing to do, and we were in trouble all the time.
Which one did you like better, Vietnam or San
I
Antonio?
really like Vietnam better because, man, it was, we were in trouble all the time, basically.
How
old were you though?
I don't know. I have to do the math. 24, 25.
Yeah. That getting in trouble all the time tends to happen around those ages.
Whenever you finished flight school and they shipped you off on your first tour, how many hours did you have?
Oh, gosh. Oh, probably 150. All right, I don't know. I'd have to do the math. Maybe 100, a little over 100 hours, probably.
Really? And so then you flew Peter Pilot, which is second in command.
Yeah.
You flew that for
90 days, about 90 days in your unit, yeah. And then you made aircraft commander, which I think I made it in a little less than that, but I was pretty good at what I kind of got into my rhythm over there and flying and what to do. They taught us how to do tactical approaches, and you either flew real low or you went on up above 1,500 feet. Apparently, small arms fire kind of dissipates after 1,500 feet. But either that or the other. But if you were at 1,500, you had to get that thing down so you could go in. And we went into weird places, you learn to land in close places where you had to knock if it was banana trees, you knew which trees you could knock down, banana being one of them.
Shit.
So you were literally trimming trees.
Yeah, you didn't want to trim the hardwood trees. Bananas, it's just like, it's philodendron here.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
But bamboo, never. It would just bend over and your old blades just, go to pieces. So you never wanted to get into that. But elephant grass wasn't too bad, but you kind of wanted to get deep into it. But, yeah, you get so close where you'd have to knock bananas, but that's about all you're allowed to do. You hit any big trees. I was over there, and I was still Peter Pilot, and we were hovering up close to the side of a steep mountain, and they had burned it, and there was a lot of snags, and we were going to try to pick up a kid, and they were going to bring him where our people could grab him. I'm out here motioning, nobody can see me. But,
yeah, we got the cameras. It's working.
And they got him, but the poor guys in the back were motioning us, and they put us right in the tree, and it took about that much, about a foot of blade off, or 8 inches. And it was getting dark. And, of course, it was already dark when we got going. And we got him in there, and, man, that thing shook. It shook so bad that you couldn't see the instruments.
Oh, wow.
But we were west of Ankei on the road, and that was mean Indian country at the time.
I was going to say you weren't going to land and check it out.
And I told the crew, I said, I was Peter Pilot. I said, we ain't landing out here. As long as this thing's running, we're going. And we made it back, but gosh, it just shook.
Oh, man, I can't even imagine.
And those are big blades, but you take that much off. They were so well balanced, you could watch them out there. They were full teetering blades, and so a bird would land on the end, and it would go down, So they were well.
Of course, those blades on the UH-1s, they're probably about as wide as this table, aren't they?
No. I don't think. Now, you got those, and then you went into the C model, Charlie model.
You got a deer out there in your yard?
You got a couple does walking around.
She's a pet. She'll come in the house if you let her. But I don't know what they were. They were about that wide, 18 inches. They were 18 inches.
Uh-huh.
But the C model was not even more than that.
Wow.
They used them for gunships, and the difference. I'd flown a C model in flight school, but they were stronger, heftier, or something. But if you lost hydraulics in them, they were just a beast to get down. Even the Huey was a beast. I lost hydraulics one night, and we just lifted the patient on, and his old stomach was blown out, and his guts were showing, and just as they threw him on, I saw a caution light come on, and you punched it, and it said hydraulics, and of course you could feel. So we took off. Hell, I wanted to stay there. We can always take off and get it going. You can land. That's the other. And it was night, and we went to an air base, which is next door to where I was commanding, and we just slid her in, But I had a big old warrant officer with me, about your side, and took him to push down on the collective. But a lot of times you'd have to stand on it and put your shoulder against the ceiling to get it going down.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Just where there was that much resistance in getting
that hydraulics locked it up, It was, on a C model, you would. I've had guys tell me, one of the guys have to get on it and stand on it.
Oh, wow.
So he could slowly push it down.
Wow.
Yeah, that's still better. I'd take my chances with that, too, over sitting in the jungle.
But it wasn't too bad. We slid it on. We had 2 of us, and we could control it.
Uh-huh. So by the time you started flying over there, most of y'all's combat techniques with flying had kind of been worked out.
Yeah.
As opposed to what a lot of people don't understand about Vietnam, was helicopters were a new tool and new thing. And so, or at least for, heavy combat use like they're using in the Vietnam War. So, when the whole conflict kicked off, there's a lot of you guys they just threw the keys to, and we're kind of like, well, figure it out. We don't know how it's supposed to be done. Am I correct?
Well, your unit took somebody and actually took an instructor where they had to designate, and he'd take you out and show you how to do what they did, and then you started going on missions, and that was the big teacher. But you knew how to do
Trial
it.
by fire.
Yeah. That was the best way. You know how to get the thing back home. So, and then after a couple of weeks, after a few missions, you learn real fast, and it was pretty quick,
Okay.
But at Fort Rucker, you had 2 parts of that school, flight school, and half of it's at Fort Walters up here at Mineral Wells, and the other was Fort Rucker, Alabama, and that's when you went into instruments. They taught you how to get full instrument, ticket, and then they put you in a Huey, and you started doing stuff, going out and playing war with them, and flying formation, which I never did, but the slicks all did. They wasn't really, the whole school wasn't designed for medevac. They were designed for slicks and guns, which I wanted to be a gun. I wanted to be a gun pilot. Probably wouldn't be here talking to you if I had been, but because they really busted a lot of them. A lot of guys that I was in flight school with, in my class, how fast it was in '68, because it was booming over there. I took a month's leave because I had a lot of leave. I thought, well, I'd take it. And by the time I got over there, I think a half a dozen of them were dead already.
Oh, really?
That's how vicious it was,
Jeez.
So
Wow.
And they damn sure didn't want helicopters flying around them.
we had a lot of aggressive guys. Of course, we lost one on graduate night. He drove into a tree.
Oh man, didn't even make it.
Yeah, he drank too much. But we were drinking. God, we drank a lot. But that's a shame that graduation night he lost one guy.
Being a medevac ship, did y'all have gunners, or did y'all?
No, we weren't allowed to carry mounted guns if you were a Red Cross helicopter. Now, their CAV had a different deal, and I don't know how they explained it out, but they had a subdued Red Cross. We had a big Red Cross on ours, and you couldn't carry mounted guns. Of course, when we went up north where that really was crazy up there, we would always, not we, all of us would, but some of us strap them. We could get an M60 we'd found somewhere and strap it under the seat, so you might have to, fight your way out. We had a lot of guys shot out and had to just wait till somebody come and got them. And usually, if you were in picking up somebody, if it's a gunshot wound, obviously, unless he shot himself, there's something going on there.
Right.
That was always
Around,
the theory,
And they didn't just run off because they shot a guy. They're still there waiting.
Yeah, because they knew somebody's coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully it wasn't guns, but the guns, they couldn't beat them back either. They little peckerheads could fight, and man, they were good at it. And it was their environment, too,
Right.
So
That's what I think would be the hardest thing to, probably the biggest shock when you first got there, because all we've seen are pictures and things like that. But I've been in New Zealand when we were there, how thick forests can actually be.
Yeah.
It's hard to when somebody tells you, oh, it's thick, and you're from Texas, you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be thick. And then you get there, and it's just like a wall of green. I'm sure that's
and you're scattered in the middle of that. My gosh.
Yeah. And they're telling you to land somewhere, and it just looks like trees and all that.
Well, they'd have it cut out a little better. They had a spot there, and we had done it enough. We knew what that Huey'd fit in, kind of. At night it was kind of a mess.
Oh, I'm sure.
But we would fly at night. We did a lot of our work at night. My first tour, you'd have a crew that stayed, nights and days. But on my second tour, I was commanding a unit, and I felt that if you let a crew do nothing but fly nights all week, after a second night, you were really geared in for it. So your eyes were set, and I enjoyed it. But if just doing it one night and every once in a while, you never get into sync with it. It seemed like
that makes sense.
Yeah, if it's a good moonlight night, you could land without any lights and stuff and all that. The worst thing we had was a hoist. Had an electronic hoist that mounted on the side. You see them in these Coast Guard helicopters. We had one of those, and that was a mess. It had a jungle penetrator, which is a kind of a bomb looking, and seats folded out, and they'd sit him on in time on there. But if he couldn't land, they'd run that thing down in the trees. But you had to sit there for,
and you're just a
minutes.
Stationary target.
And that was great in the daytime. Do it at night with all your landing lights. You had to have everything
Oh,
on so you
man.
could see. And they'd peck us off. God.
Wow.
I mean, people, you were sweating blood when
I'm
you got
sure.
through that.
Did you ever come close to getting shot down?
No, I got shot up a lot of times, and I got shot at a lot. Fortunately, I went up to a mission up north, which was crazy, and I made aircraft commander after that thing. But my commander was Colonel Scott, and he still comes to our reunion. Great guy, but word going everywhere I went, it seemed like I get shot at, And I cruised. We never would get hit, but we get shot at. But I was so erratic. I'd come in the wrong way, and they couldn't predict what I was doing. They knew we were going to come into the wind normally. Well, I'd come in the other way.
Yeah.
That thing had enough power. You could stop it downwind. But and I did that, and I never really got hit that much. But he got a call from headquarters to send a captain down there to brief the general every day, and he thought I would be good for that. And I really didn't want to go, but he said, "Oh, you need to go down there." So I did in 90 days.
Oh man!
And but we had, gosh, stuff that happened after that. I saw a report of a kid that they got shot down right in a regimental area, and all they could do is get out, which is hard to do in a Huey unless they helped you. You had a sliding door here that covered you. You had those armor seats, and then you had a thing that the crew chief usually had to pull away, or you had to climb around and go out the other way. Anyway, they got out, but the crew members were all dead. They'd shot them, and they could throwing grenades. The thing was burning, and he and this other kid started running, and they just run completely out of the regimental area, just jumping over fire pits and running and running and running. You know, if you want to have something to give you PTSD, that could keep you awake at night.
Oh, I imagine.
Because they'd come back at you and say, "Gee, I can remember running," and they just run all the way out of it, you know, and survived that day. I saw the report on that. I said, "Crap." That kid told me, he said it was so cold that night that we just had to hug each other to keep warm.
And of course, that was people
before,
hunting them.
That was before, rainbow. Hey, you didn't do that, but he said, "Damn, we were about to freeze to death." And so we decided to hug each other. And just
I got a question. So you said you didn't get shot a lot, but you got shot at a lot.
Shot at a lot.
How do you know you're getting shot at?
Oh, you can hear it or see it.
See it?
At night, you could see it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I guess at night.
And you could fly along. Of course, at night, everybody got shot at. But we'd fly at 1,500. You could see the tracers come out. And they were shooting at your sound,
Oh, yeah.
And that Huey sound, it's projected way out. They were way out there.
So they were just blind firing, just hoping to hit somebody.
Yeah, and you can see it whether it's a 50 caliber. If it's you could see a big ball go up.
Oh, man.
And we would immediately cut off all the lights when they started that, because you had lights on the circuit breakers up above you, and they claimed they could see that with the field glasses. And then you had all your running lights, so you just cut them all off and cut everything out dim.
Yep.
And just let them go.
Oh, man. I'm sure, I guess at a certain point, it's part of the run. Like, you know it's going to happen.
Listen to the radio. Had one radio station called AFVN, Armed Forces Radio, and you listen to the radio and ba-doom, ba-doom.
Dang.
We were kids, though. It was a hoot to me.
Well, before we sat down, you kind of halfway started telling us a story, and Emma's like, "Nah, hold on for the podcast."
No, he didn't want to tell it. No, what story was this? That story?
It was this story.
It's kind of an extensive thing, but I was in a company-sized unit, which had 25 helicopters. And the way they had it set up, they had 2 companies over there with 25 helicopters. And then they had detachments scattered everywhere. And they had 7 helicopters. I commanded a detachment. My second tour, I actually had 2 of them put together because they starting to get out of there. But they would lose 2 or 3 aircraft, and we had to go support them. So that's what I was doing all the time. My platoon would go north, and the other platoons in that company would go in different directions to support these. But I went up north, way up north, what we call Fubai, and that was up right close to the DMZ, and we call that mean Indian country. It was, man, we sent 3 aircraft up there. I was one of them, and I was still Peter Pilot. And they called us out one day and said, go out there, y'all going to make a pickup. There's 3 of us that went out there, 2 from my unit and 1 from the unit that I was supporting.
Right.
And about 2/3 of the way out there, I was running the radios, and they said, "Oh, you got to get out. It's too hot. We're not going to let y'all come in." So we went back, and the next day, the fog lifted about 10, 11 o'clock, and so we went back out there, and man alive, here we go in that thing. I was the number 2 aircraft. The one in front of me was a guy named Gerald Miller and a guy named Griffin. Griffin was the aircraft commander, and Gerald Miller was a Peter Pilot. And I watched, I was running the radios, and that's about it going in. The guy on the ground told me, he said, "As soon as this aircraft leaves, you better be on the ground." And I could see them lifting up and see actually they're in banana trees, and you could see them start to push down as he lifted up. And I said, "We'll be there." And of course, as soon as he landed, here we went. But I had jets going by me so fast, and I could see the pilot. That's that close. I was looking down on the pilot. And he would drop his napalm, and it would just circle like slow motion. It's like in the movies.
Oh, man.
And stuff going off everywhere. Well, we went in, and we picked up 22. And these are Vietnamese Rangers, and they're little bitty people. Some of them were women. Damn gum, it's crazy. And at that time, we had the console of that Huey, and then beyond it had a descrambler, which extended it. And one of the Vietnamese sat on that, and he was oozing so much blood that it was just running down in our stuff. And I had to make him move. I can remember that. He couldn't speak English, so I had to make him move. I said, "You're bleeding all over our stuff." But Ranger, Special Forces Ranger, grabbed me, reached through the window and grabbed me by the collar like this and pulled me over where he could yell at me. Said, "When you take off, make sure you go to the right. Don't go to the left." And he pointed at a big stack of bodies over there. He said, "These guys," I guess they went to the left. But he said, "Make sure you go to the right." And I told the other guy, "Yeah, we can do that." So we did. And fortunately, the old boy that was flying was a pilot. He was named Sam DeLoach, and he had great ability to get the most out of that aircraft. And we had to go straight up for a eucalyptus tree. And I thought it was a teakwood tree, but it was eucalyptus. It go way the hell up there. And we had to go up and then go over. That was our only way out, other than go back the same way. Well, another aircraft was coming in behind me, so I did. But anyway, he went to the right, and I kept beeping that engine up, beeping it up. Boy, he just got to the top of it, and I told him that's all there was. And he just eased it through the top of that tree, and boy, then we got going again because he kind of dived it down and went into a hard right turn. I said, "I'm holding that power in there, so just keep pulling it until we get this thing out of here." And we went right over a gun. The only reason they couldn't get us because they had it on wheels. It was one of them 51 calibers that had it on wheels, and they couldn't. And one of my crew members said, "They're right below us," and he shot a couple of times, but they put a hole right through our skid, and we were the only one that got it. But I have Gerald Miller, who was the first aircraft in there. He's one of these studious guys, and he found the diary of the guy that was commanding all this mess that was going on.
Oh, wow.
And what had happened was they'd gotten some intelligence that there was some bunch coming down the trail, and they put in 2 companies of Rangers. And by the time they got them in there, they had so much shot up and shot down that they decided maybe they better get out. But they captured an old kid and found out that there was a battalion in there that's coming at them. And they said, "Well, I think that's 3-to-1 odds in their country." God,
Right.
So we're gonna have to get out of here. And boy, they couldn't get them out. Just couldn't get anybody in there. And that's why they called us off the first afternoon, because it was just too hot. Everybody's going to the bus.
So it had just been suicide mission for everybody.
Yeah. And like Gerald Miller told me, he said, "Good thing that old boy on there had his head screwed on right, because he saved our butt, because they'd have just blown us out of there."
And that's a crazy thing, too. Like, when you look at the severity of a bad decision from chain of command, those guys that are higher up like that, if he would have just said, "No, we got to get him, go."
Yeah, and they were really desperate to get him out because they're going to lose the whole 2 companies if they didn't, and they were getting pretty anxious. But fortunately, he said, "No, we've already tried." In fact, you can read the diary of this guy, because Gerald found the diary of the guy in the sky. I guess he put it on a tape and then transcribed it off, but they were hunting a Chinook constantly. Every time anybody would leave to go get ammunition, he said, "Look, see if you can find a certain number," and it was a Chinook fully loaded. They finally found it, and everybody's dead. So the death loss was crazy.
Wow.
But that was quite a experience. I can still vividly remember all that. It's funny.
I'm sure.
And then to read this guy's diary and find out what was happening before we got there, because they were dead. They were going to kill every one of them. They had them way overwhelmed, and they were going to do it.
That's crazy.
So
I can't imagine that visually, coming in and jet below you, dropping napalm.
Yeah.
Like, put it down.
But they put out an all-out effort to get those people out of there, and we were part of that all-out effort. But they put in artillery. I think they had a ship offshore. I don't know if it's New Jersey. I think was dropping shells in there even. And man, they were doing everything they could, and they lit that place up. I guess there's a big valley like this, solid trees and stuff. And I know the first time I saw it, when we first out to West Day, I looked over the company, it looked like a mat across all those trees. And I said, gee, it looks like you could just land on that, you know. And the kid in the back said, that's 300 feet from the floor.
Wow.
Those trees are probably 300 feet tall.
And it was so dense, it looked like you could
land
land
over the top of it, like grapevines all over the top of that thing.
Oh,
And I can remember that. This is way up north, across from Laos.
right.
I guess it's dark down there, and it was kind of dark down there. But they had blown so many places. I think during the process, they may have dropped a 10,000-pound bomb. They'd take a helicopter and drop it, trying to open up some country so we could land.
Jeez.
And they were doing everything they could.
You said you were still Peter Pilot whenever that mission came up. How long had you been in country?
That was March the 30th, and I got there in February, so it's probably 6 weeks.
So that one of the most impactful events of the entire deal for you
I
out
was
of two
done.
tours was in the very beginning.
I think I saw a lot of stuff. In fact, before then, we had landed in a place, and oh boy, I can remember that vividly. It was right along the coast, and it was a landing base called English, which we based one helicopter at, and they called us out, and we went in, landed, and man, the ground started just churning. You know, you could see the bullets, you could hear it, and they had an old kid that I think was shot in the back. And they were trying to bring him on a litter. They didn't want to just throw him on because he was already back, and they were laying down back there. And I told them, I was just been in combat, I hadn't been in 2 weeks, and I told the other kid, I said, well, we better get out of here because they're not coming. And our guys were going to go out and get them. And all of a sudden, the windows just exploded. And but he jerked full power, and I mean, we shot out of there. And we got some gunships right quick. We're on a call, and they were right there. And they went in, and there was a village across the canal, and they went in and just had it burning. We went in with them, and they just shot it all up with rockets and stuff. Just like, man, this is great. You know? And we landed, and you could go out and take a piss, and nobody bothered you after that.
It was safe.
But we had a windshield, and we thought it was shot out. But it wasn't. What they'd done is shot at that time, you had stabilizer bars. You know, you had the blades, and then you had the other bars. They shot a hole where they connected on one of them. Didn't knock it off, but that chunk came down and hit that windshield. And man, it knocked the crap. It shattered it all over the place.
I bet that was pretty loud.
Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, it was gone, you know. And we thought it had been shot out, but I think that was the deal. Because if it shot out, his bullets had to come from behind me, through me and between him and the pilot.
Oh, wow.
Because we were sitting that close.
Right.
It had to come, and that's getting a little. But I didn't hear a bullet come by. You'd have heard that pop, you know.
Oh, right. Cracking the sound barrier right by your head.
How many hours did you fly your first tour? Do you recall?
I want to say about maybe 600.
Oh, wow.
Maybe a little less than that, but somewhere in there.
Wow. You mentioned napalm, you know, in that specific mission and scenario. Was your performance, y'all's performance with those Hueys, was it ever limited by the heat coming off that napalm?
No, we never got that close.
Never got that close.
I don't think so. I worked with some A1Es, you know, that prop job, and they had a 40 millimeter cannon. I think is what they had. Maybe in 20. 40 is a pretty good size. 20. Anyway, they were great to work with. Funny guy. And they prepared a place for us one time, and I was up in the mountains west, up in what they call Bamituit, which is a big, went through all the lines, and Teddy Roosevelt had a lodge up there and everything way back. Beautiful country. But Pleiku and up through there, and we were going out to pick up some guys, and they wouldn't let us go in until they prepped it a little bit, and they just sparkled, you know. They'd make a run, sparkle, and here we go to land, and not them. They were shooting at us across there, and I said, "Dadgum, get them!" You know, it's one of these, hurry up, get them off our ass. And they made us some more passes while we were trying to pick them up, you know. But that was later in my tour. But that one where the ground was just chewing, I hadn't been in country 2 weeks. That was kind of a learning, one of those, you know,
welcome to Vietnam.
experiences things. And I said, dang gum, you know, I got a year of this. 2 weeks, 50 more to go.
Oh yeah, and you probably did. You were like, "Is this the norm?
Yeah.
Like, is this what?"
You're starting to think, "Gee,
Go back to your cot every Friday and scratch another tick in it.
Yeah, mark that one off, But gee, it started early, and it just kind of went that way. And then they would send me up north and got into that mess, and then it's just constant.
Man, I see a bunch of. I shouldn't say a bunch. There's still a couple UH-1s flying around today. I can't imagine how expensive it is to keep those things going.
Yeah, there's one up at Midland. The guy's got one. He got a ranch down at Sanderson. And I landed up there one time. I was going to do a photo thing with a 44 and a shutdown. And they had a bunch of school kids over there. And he had a Cobra and a Huey. And they were just immaculate. I mean, pristine. And he was very proud of it. And I don't blame him because I went over and, gosh, he just took me in. Oh, you sit in it. Oh, no, I didn't want to. Well, I wish I would have now. But I don't know if he's still there. But he would fly it every once in a while. I think if you got it put together good and you didn't have to do much to them after a while.
Just getting them put back together.
Because we were pretty rough on them. We would, they had to make, I got to where I could do a tactical approach. And what you did is, throw it out of trim, back off on the power, but don't bottom it out. You can do that now and get one other, even a 22, but back off to 10 pounds or whatever, manifold pressure, and then slip it sideways and then put it out of trim, let it fall sideways down, and it'll come out of there. Oh, damn, you could throw a brick out and you could beat it to the ground. I can tell you. Well, we got to doing that, and mechanic said, y'all need to quit that because our tailboom boats are starting to get kind of bent a little bit. But, you talk about, going there and just learning as you go. I had a fixed wing instructor because the Army was good to me. They sent me to fixed wing school, and my primary instructor was an old fellow that flew Corsairs in the Pacific. And I asked him, how did y'all start? And he said, well, they didn't have any two-seater Corsairs. They were all single-seater. And he said, when I got to my unit, commander said, just go down there and get an old number 62, and the crew chief will show you how to start it. And fly it around a while. So you can imagine that's what they did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a guy I was filming at outside of, I guess out there in Bowie, Texas, and we're doing a big video shoot and hog hunting and just all kinds of fun stuff. And I don't know who owned it or where it was from, but there's Huey landed out there, and we put a minigun on the side of it and flew around and blew up a car.
Oh, goody! yeah.
It was that's the first time I've been around one, running.
They're a fun machine to fly. I think the 44s, it lumbers along, got good acceleration, hard to slow down. That's the way the Huey was.
Everybody that has spent an extensive amount of time in both of them has told me the same thing.
Yeah.
That
they're pretty similar.
That a 44 flies really similar to a
just you can't pick up near as much.
No, you just can't pick up. But I know one time I made a liquor run and must have made put 50 cases in there of liquor. I don't know.
Really?
They had it stacked to the ceiling. It was for a club down there where I was based, and they said, would you go up there? When you go up there, would you pick up our liquor? God, I didn't think I was going to pick up that much. If I'd have crashed, it'd have been a mushroom cloud of alcohol there. But I got in trouble doing a wedding. This is with a 22 going up here to film a wedding at Rotan. I don't know. And as soon as I got there, the weddings planner said, they had a big tent out there and had all these people from Fort Worth. I mean, and we're running out of juice, and they said, would you go in and get some? Well, hell, 22, what do you call? But they told me what liquor store it was. I said, okay, dumbass, I shouldn't have done that. But I went in there and landed at that liquor store. There was a place to land, vacant lot. And it happened to be a liquor store where somebody had bought a lottery ticket and won. And I mean, they were laying up. And I run in there, try to leave that thing running, I couldn't do that because it's in a ghetto area, and goddamn kids were falling out of the soft floor coming down to me, jumping out of the windows. It was that bad, And they were jumping up trying to catch my blades as they go around.
Oh, my God.
Oh, man. So I got away from them and went in and said, I need to get that liquor. I can only haul 3 cases, maybe 4 at the most,
Right.
They said, we'll get it to you. And they brought it out and cranked that thing up. By the time I got it cranked, here comes a Gestapo, you know. And they come driving up and says, you can't land here. And I told them, you ain't don't worry about it. I ain't never going to land here again.
Jesus.
But I took that liquor out, and then they had a van full. But that was one of the crazy things.
Man, well, I know who to call if I ever run short on some fire water there.
Yeah, go to me. God,
send Aubrey to make a liquor run.
What a wreck. I said, I'm not going to get out of this with an aircraft because those kids, damn, right in the ghetto, you know, and that damn kids just swarmed all over that thing.
Yeah,
that's crazy. It's a miracle one of them didn't run into the tail rotor or something.
Yeah, and they were jumping up. You've had that jumping up trying to catch the blade. And then when it's all over, here comes the Gestapo.
It's like, hey, those will chop down banana trees. Yeah, you don't want to slap those.
Those deputies, you can't land here anymore. Well, don't worry about it, Jack.
Actually, I remember one of my very first Aubrey experiences. Should we tell the 172 story?
Running off the end of the runway at Brownwood.
I delivered a helicopter down to him and Kyle here at San Angelo, and I was still pretty young at the time. And we got in the 172, and they're gonna jump me over to Brownwood. And it's probably, a 20-minute flight?
Yeah.
You know, and like the rest of us good, respectable airmen, you know, we always check NOTAMs. Not really.
Not really.
And we come barreling down the runway at Brownwood, and we look up, and, of course, we're screaming in there. And
no headsets or anything?
No.
We had tower and everything.
And
you know.
Next thing you know, like right after, gear touches down, I'm sitting in, Aubrey's flying, I'm sitting riding shotgun, and Kyle's in the back seat. And we touch down, and we all look up, and there's construction equipment all over this runway. Dude's out there like repaving it.
Oh my God!
And at this point, he'd already committed to stopping.
Yeah, we
had
full
power off and everything.
Oh yeah,
wasn't enough to go.
Oh yeah. And I've never seen construction workers move that fast, getting out of the way of an airplane screaming down the runway. And where the runways crossed, they'd taken and excavated it. And so there's probably about a 6-7 inch ledge right there.
Oh, man.
We go off it, and we managed to jump up the other side. And about, I don't know, it's probably 50 yards, there's a set of concrete barriers. And he got it shut down before we made the barriers.
I can tell you how that even came about. They have an AWAS,
and
which
that's
is
when you
warning,
knew he was your friend.
And we tried to dial it in, and the knob came off on the radio. So I had to leave everything the way it was, and we didn't know. We'd have known about that, and we never even knew about it. Oh man, talk about a comedy of errors! It just everything go to hell. It's embarrassing as hell.
Couldn't change the radio, so the guy working at the airport was trying to holler at us, I think, but we weren't catching any of it. We were caught up in our own conversation at the time.
Oh yeah,
I just remember getting stopped and Kyle going, "Well, fuck that! I don't think you landed fast enough."
Yeah, it could have been fun, but you can get those things stopped fast enough.
Oh yeah,
you try.
Oh yeah.
If you try hard enough, you can.
Oh yeah, there's something about a concrete barrier will motivate you pretty hard to mash on your foot brakes.
Yeah, I was pretty aggressive when I fly an airplane. I kind of quit that now, but we've got a 182 right now, and it's fun to fly. It's a great to fly, 3-bladed prop, and it goes. And we kind of retired that 172, sent it down to somebody else, let them mess with it.
Let them have some close calls at Brownwood.
I think if I started flying airplanes, I think I'd walk into it with the retrospect, after flying a helicopter X amount of hours a year and then jumping in an airplane, punting around for, 5-10 hours a year. Just come in with the perspective of just don't let it slow down and we'll be all right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's it. Boy,
land this thing at 90 knots.
When they get slow, it gives me the creeps in an airplane because I'm just not, I know it'll quit. Yeah.
And I like to be slowed down when I land.
Yeah.
Well, I've gotten to where I can slow it down. Kyle won't use flaps. Of course, we're talking about him. Damn, that's what they're for, you know. You drop full flaps right before you hit the ground, man, that thing will come to a stop, you know, right there. Man, it's great.
He likes landing at about 95.
Yeah, he's got this idea. He can come in, crab sideways, and then just before he hits the ground, he straightens it out, and he's. I don't know. That's what he wants to do.
I guess as long as he gets it down there, it's all right.
It's not for me to tell him what to do anymore. He's a big old man.
Oh, shoot.
Funny. So, you came back after the Army and you went into cattle, and then you guys got in the capture pretty heavy.
Yeah, that developed. I was doing a big part of my business was hunting coyotes and predators, and the state came out and they were going to pay for all that. And man, I lost a quarter of my business. I mean, overnight.
Right.
And so Kyle had gotten out of college, and he was guiding hunts up at Alaska, and that lasted till he and this old boy put Super Cub in the river. I think he said that wasn't any fun anymore. So, and I told him, well, you need to do something. That's a young man's game. And we had a gentleman out here that had a big ranch, had a bunch of black buck on it. He was wanting to get them off. And I mean, he had a bunch. Like 1,000 maybe.
Oh, wow.
20,000 acres. He cleaned it off good, perfect place to catch. And I just turned Kyle over to it, and he basically told Kyle, you can just have these things. And Kyle, I think the first check we sent to him was $12,000. So you can imagine, we caught black buck, and that was a good way to catch, to learn, because they're the second fastest animal in the world. The cheetah being the first one, because the Maharajas used cheetahs to chase the dadgum thing.
I didn't realize they were that fast.
Yeah.
I knew they were fast. I've filmed them before, but I didn't know they were like ranked.
They get cranked up. They're the second, I believe, fastest animal.
Really?
I hear that. But we learned to catch out there, and that was a good one to catch because white-tailed deer were easy after that.
Yeah, right.
And
you start on those little bitty, super fast animals.
And it made a good business for Kyle. He loved animals. He loved to do that, loved to mess with it. In fact, we got a hunting ranch out there that's full of exotics and stuff, and he loves that. And I'm tickled for him that. And it worked real well. He had some friends that were young enough and stupid enough to help us.
Go tackle animals.
Yeah. We used to brief them, says, take all your jewelry off, all your nose rings and earrings and your watches and your wedding rings, because they ain't going to be there when we get through.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way.
That'd probably be a real good way to lose a finger, wearing a ring.
Oh, yeah. And if you're listening to this and have no idea what we're talking about, just YouTube deer capture helicopter in Texas.
Yeah.
It'll give you a pretty good idea.
Yeah. You're shooting a net on a wild animal and then going and getting it ready to be transported.
It was an idea before that. The only way you could harvest these animals would be shooting them, and you run out of hunters. But it put it in a whole different, where you could actually gather that like cattle and take it to a sale. Or you had somebody, private treaty, and take it over to Israel.
Instead of just wasting them, basically.
Yeah, just go shoot them. And so it really opened it up. And in New Zealand, they had been capturing,
the
stags and stuff. And you ever see the film where the guy jumps off on the side of one and wallers him down?
That's crazy.
Well, I guess they just finally run out of guys. And they developed this net and a net gun, and we got one. And the flying, I did the flying, Kyle did the shooting. But you fly, it's just like NASCAR. And I had a NASCAR racer tell me this. You go as fast as you can, you're going down this curvy road at 60, and you feel like that's barely can handle it. Well, let's go up to 90, and that's what you do. You push it, and you finally push it enough to where you can really fly that thing and stay with that deer. But it takes you a little while, and then all of a sudden you're right there. It's a little hard on the aircraft. You replace some things a little faster than you normally would, but the money was good, and we made a lot of money, and now we're out of it. We're all too old. It's a young man's game, and there's guys that can do it cheaper than I can. If I get somebody who wants to capture something, I say, I'll call him. He'll do it cheaper than I'll even want to do it.
In your opinion, what is the hardest animal to catch?
Oh, gosh. We've caught the little stuff. You get into any of the sheep. If it's red sheep or something like that, because as soon as you get to them, they're going to quit and turn around and go back underneath you, and it's just constant that way. You take a Spanish goat, or he'll do the same thing. we did a demonstration on Spanish goats, and we looked like a bunch of idiots. We couldn't catch it because as soon as I get to him, he'd quit and go back under. I told Collie, as soon as he quit, shoot that net, and that's the only way we could catch him, you know. But I think any of the sheep family would be hard.
Right.
All dads are very hard because they do pull that stunt on you all the time. But black buck will stay lined out. White-tailed deer normally will just stay lined out, and you just pull up beside them and shoot the net. Black buck is very easy to catch because he's got those two big horns sticking up. And that net,
post.
it gets on them, and he steps in it on the other side.
Done.
He's done. Same way with the buck deer. But you catch a doe, you know, she don't step in it right. She'll get out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, and the other side of that is, and you don't realize it until you kind of work around it a little bit, is it's extremely easy to kill animals, catching them with a net from a helicopter. And so to get to the point where you're doing it successfully without killing, you know, a whole shit pile of animals, you know, it takes some practice.
The most common is them breaking their own necks, right?
Yeah, and scimitar oryx, they've got a long neck, and they do that. We'd go and catch some. We'd go out here and catch ours and kill her one and go to somebody else's. We might not kill but one. I said, well, this isn't right. But now we tranquilize. It's all tranquilize, and go in and hook them out. And it's, you know, because it's all big animals too now.
Right.
Scimitars, stuff like that, gemsbuck. And we caught some Pure David that away.
Those are weird looking. Emmett and I saw, we were doing a survey at a guy's, he had a little game fence place outside of Throckmorton, and he had he had a couple, I guess he had a male and a couple females. Me and him, we'd never seen one, and he just said it's like almost like a backwards elk or something. And we finally saw that, and we were like, what the shit is that?
It's a elk on toxic waste. That's what I always tell people.
They're weird looking.
Elk on toxic waste.
Aren't they from China or something like that?
Well, they're actually an animal that's extinct. They were in China, and they had a famine, and they ate all of them. And there's a monk out of France called Pierre David, and he took a couple of them and took them to France.
So there's where it came from.
Yeah, and that's how they survived it.
So literally, they just exist in Texas, basically, and any other.
Yeah, because in China they ate them all.
Yep.
You know,
a lot of people, when all of them are hungry, it takes a lot of food.
Yeah, and that's a big animal. It's big as a horse, nearly a big, medium-sized horse.
Goofy looking.
Yeah, very goofy. We got some horns out there at our lodge, and they're
A lot of people don't know what they are when they see them.
No.
I was turkey hunting.
We were like, that's got to be what that is, because I don't know what the hell else it'd be.
I was turkey hunting on a game ranch in Florida one time, and I was just out of college, just kind of cutting my teeth in the whole outdoor industry. Sitting up against a tree, camoed up, sitting there, and about from me to this back door back here walks a Pierre David, and I'd never seen one before. No one told me what was out there. I was just like, it walked right in front of me. I was like, holy shit, what is that? It wasn't like I'm from Texas. It's just they got whitetail. That's and hogs.
Very peculiar deer.
Yeah.
And you get around elk or red deer. I think the red deer is the most magnificent, because we had a bunch here that a guy had unloaded his best part, and I mean they were just magnificent.
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, when they all crowned up on top.
Oh yeah, and everywhere.
Yep.
But anyway, there you go. But we captured a lot of stuff. We captured everything you could capture. Aoudads, no cats, no monkeys, stuff like that. But we captured a lot of stuff.
I imagine catching a monkey would be a little bit of a rodeo.
I think getting it out of the net would be the rodeo.
We caught a feral hog, caught a coyote one time. This is screwing off, it's something to do. See if we could do it. But,
oh, man.
Oh, shoot. Well, I feel like we're running out of steam a little bit. I'm sure we've missed some topics, but Aubrey, we really appreciate it. It's neat to hear those stories, and you have such a good attitude about it because, like you said, you were young and you enjoyed it. I mean, there was bad things, obviously, but, young and full of piss and vinegar and ready to go. But no, we do appreciate your time, and I learned some things, and I'm glad I didn't have to go do that.
Well, my first tour, of course, it was popping over there. My second tour, I commanded a unit, and it was not so much. I didn't enjoy it so much. And running a unit was
More
trying to
headaches.
keep discipline, and I was as old as they were.
Oh, there was one thing I meant to ask you. How did you end up back here without a Vietnamese wife? That seemed like pretty common.
Well, I had her at home, and she just said, "No, you can't do that."
Did you have any buddies end up doing that?
No, I didn't. I had a young kid, and I hate to tell this. He was a sweet kid. Our draftees were really good kids. He was out of Tennessee or Kentucky, and he fell in love over there. And that little girl was really trying to get him to marry her because she wanted to come out of that mess.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, you can't blame any of them for that.
His mother wrote me a letter, and I still have it. She said, "You do whatever you can to keep him from bringing that girl home. We're country people, and we don't think we could handle that. But you do whatever you can." And we got his time where it'd take 90 days to get that girl out of there, the embassy.
Sure, yeah.
And he was never going to get her out anyway, but I think about my first sergeant, I told him about it, and he said, well, about 2 weeks before he needs to go home, we'll just drop it on him. God, he was mad at me. I guess he still hates me. But I wonder when he got home and cussing that captain, that, God damn, you can't believe what he did.
I bet the mom was like,
said, thank you, Jesus.
oh.
I could have loved to have seen her face when she comes home.
Doing the Lord's work over here.
Thank you. Yeah, I would know she was. God, poor. I have the letter here, and it's quite a cute letter. But
well, shoot.
Yeah,
well,
thank you for those stories. I appreciate
absolutely.
it.
That was a good one to wind it up on. The love breaker, heartbreaker over here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. I enjoyed this. We're going to try to do some more stuff like this where we go get a little bit more outside perspective on life, so you don't have to keep just listening to our bullshit every time. But Aubrey, again, thank you very much. It was good to sit down and have a conversation. And that's it, guys. Y'all got anything you want to say?
No, not at all.
All right, thanks. Man Shit Podcast. Peace.
Later.
Later.